Hey, good
Man,
evening. We don't
we
get to
stopped
dance on
again.
that
I
one.
was getting my groove on.
I always just shut it short.
I mean, you
Boom.
just like cut it off.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Awakenings Within. How are we this evening? Nice to see you all. Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us. Joe, he's the dude. Uh,
Well, we
and
have three
Steven, he's a
dudes
dude
on, which
too.
is
And then Bill's
normally
a
we
dude.
start off with all the women. So it's nice that the men have come to the party.
Hey,
So
welcome.
I don't feel all by myself in a hen house.
Nah. Oh, by yourself in a hen house. Oh, hey, it's another dude.
I know.
Yeah,
Well,
where's all my
that dude, I'm jealous of because he's down in the sunshine of Florida.
well,
So,
oh, wait. Oh no, Michael, you did not go to Florida before me. That's not even fair. I'm
yeah.
going tomorrow though.
Ah.
Away from this crazy snow. What do you
So
think
we're
about the
keeping
snow?
Kansas City present and accounted for in the Florida land, huh?
That's right.
We're
I will be
representing
there.
down there. Mike
So,
leaves, you show up.
hey, I'm breaking into your party, Michael. I don't know where you'll be, but I'm breaking in. So,
Yeah.
how's your week? How's everybody's week going? I'm really excited.
I gathered that you have come to the show with lots of energy and
I have some
enthusiasm.
energy this
So, of course,
evening.
my analytical brain is going, okay, so what's been going on with Sandy this week that's giving her this boost?
Florida. That's all I'm going to
Okay,
say.
so it's
Florida.
anticipation.
Well, if you're in Florida, you say Florida.
Okay,
Because most of them are from New England and they say Florida.
I got it.
So,
Florida.
okay, now wait a minute. At the Tiki Bar, y'all didn't tell me you were going to be down there. All right, we're coming to join you. All right. So, hey everyone, mugs up. See what I have? I have my sea creatures tonight.
You're Florida.
My Florida.
Florida.
I got my sea creatures. So
I was all expecting that you were going to say I had this wonderful week, and these are all the things that happened to me. And here it is. You're just in anticipation of leaving us here in Kansas City and heading down to the beach
on a jet plane.
Wow.
Don't know if I'll be back
You are
again.
an adventure waiting to happen.
Yes. Where will I be? Ooh, that's a mystery. I can't tell everybody, Michael, on public.
In Florida, you can.
Or something.
In Florida, you can because Florida. The governor of Florida, he kind of bucked the trend here, and
I love Florida.
Things down in Florida are a little bit different and a lot more open and free, and people are a lot more cool. I was just reading today one of the paradoxes of this whole thing as well. The media has been poopying the whole open up things. The states that are all opening up are seeing this nosedive in COVID cases, and all the ones that are fear-based and saying, mask up and don't talk to anyone are all having the biggest problem. So we have the exact opposite cause and effect.
Well, I was just told I had to quarantine when I get back.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where are you now? Can you tell us that? Look at Michael. You're being funny.
Yeah,
Michael,
well,
I'm going to Tampa.
Had a few Jack and Cokes, and he's ready to, just have some fun.
Yeah, I'm going to Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to all three because it's lovely there.
Is it now?
Is it? It is. I'm going to find my future home. So.
Okay. So this is a scouting expedition for the next chapter of your life.
Yes, my next chapter, my next season. If I'm gonna coach other people to live their dream life, why am I not living my dream life? That's what I kept saying. Okay, Sandy, it's time for me to do it. So
right.
So I'm pretty excited. New connections.
I'm
and everything.
A bit torn because my dream life would be Colorado or in the mountain areas, but my grandkids and kids are all here. So I'm torn between my dream life and my dream life, meaning I just love my grandkids and kids to pieces. So I would like to stay near them. But
that's so nice.
My adventure life would be in the mountains.
Yes. Yes. The mountains are great. We see that behind you. So mine is the beach. Yours is the mountains.
Yeah.
So yep, it's an adventure, Michael. And hi, Lynn. Thanks for joining. And hey, Amy. I meant to say hi, Amy, as well. And yep, I know. She's going to be down there shortly, too. So go for the dream. Thank you, Grace. I appreciate that. So what's on our wonderful topic wheel tonight? What are we feeling?
Usually your department, and I'm sort of the tag on to your sort of impulses. So
I hope you guys took a look at oh, hey, party people. Yeah, we're definitely we're feeling that party vibe, aren't we?
Except for we do have one problem here. So before we get into our topics, I want to put a protest in.
Oh, protest.
And the protest is that Mike goes down to Florida by himself. Sandy goes to Florida by herself. How come the rest of us in this wonderful community of friends and family are not being invited as well? Yeah. See, somehow or another, we're being left out.
Yeah. Joe, are you coming to Florida? What about you, Lynn? I know Lynn's coming too, but not till later. So, hey, yes, maybe we can all visit you. Bob and I will road trip. All right. Sounds good. That's it. Okay. Well,
I know why you're moving to Tampa.
Why?
Because that's one of the headquarters for Scientology, and you want to be near Tom Cruise.
How'd you guess?
I knew it.
Tom Cruise.
I don't knew care.
It. I still love the guy. Top Gun will always be my Top Gun. Love that movie. I used to take my kids, and I lived outside of Oceana, Virginia, in Virginia Beach. And when Tom Cruise came out, when Top Gun came out, I had just moved there, and I used to watch the F-14s take off and fly away there. And since I was an ex-military wife, I would sit at the end of the runway and let my kid, and we'd play the soundtrack the whole time.
Well, my mom and aunt were, they love the Flyboys, they love the jets as well. So when I was living out in California, I took them on a lunch date to Coronado Island, where we have an Air Force base, right? Yes. So we're sitting there out on the porch, and pretty soon the jets start taking off. And I thought my mom and aunt were just going to go crazy. It was just such a thrill for them to be sitting there having lunch, watching these jets go flying by,
Joe, you're the Tom Cruise's stunt double. That's awesome. Wow. You know what I'm mad about?
The people in our group.
I'm mad about June 26th of 2020. Top Gun 2 was supposed to come out. They never released it. What's up with that?
Well, that's because they want those theater bucks.
I am protesting. Come on, Tom.
It's about
Joe. Talk to Tom. Come on, talk to Tom.
About the money. So we got to talk to the govs. We got to get these govs to open things up a little bit so that we can all go back to the movies.
He says, but he's full size though. Yeah, Tom Cruise is a little dude.
He is.
I got to see him in New York. Actually, I got to see him in New York City. He was doing a shoot in Times Square. I don't know which movie it was. It was one of those Jack whatever movies.
Jack Reacher.
Jack, right. And he was in the downtown, and of course they had it all sectioned off and everything. And he's a tiny guy.
Yeah, he's 5'7".
Yeah, I mean, I could go look over the people and see.
I know. Yeah, my people in the industry tell me that's, when you film him, everything is about angles so that they can make sure that he doesn't look 5'7".
Well, I only knew that he was really that short when he jumped on that couch on the Tonight Show.
Oh, right.
So, okay, enough about Tom Cruise. No more Tom Cruise.
All right.
Let's talk about something important.
Okay, tell me what's important.
Oh, he is 5'7" if he has his heels on. I had the coolest guy. So last week, it was raining out. It was yucky out.
That's
and
true.
And I was sitting in traffic, and there was this guy who just danced. I'm serious. He danced across the street, and he was going like this to everybody. He was like, "Hey," and he's going like this, and he's like pointing at you. Yeah, you. And he's going like this, and he's in the rain. He's got his mask on. And he's got his bag lunch because he just came from work or whatever. And he was like the happiest guy I've seen in a long time. And I thought to myself at the time, I thought, I need to start living my life like that again. like he had like that ultimate, like he just got off of work. Right. He's walking in the rain. Okay. Again, no umbrella, right. And he's still happy. So what, of course I put it on my Facebook and somebody goes, well, he must've been high on drugs. And I'm like, no. Oh, you can't be happy and be high, like,
well, I think we've talked about this before, but one of the most fascinating movies for me is an oldie called Don Juan DeMarco.
Oh, yes.
And in that movie, you have Johnny Depp. I think it's one of Marlon Brando's last movies, if not the last one. And I think it's Mary Steenburgen or whatever.
Yes.
But for those of you that don't know the plot, Marlon Brando's this psychiatrist who's like 6 months away from retiring. He's exhausted, worn out, burned out. He's become a grumpy old man from dealing with everybody's issues. And he's just like ready to check out. Right. But he's all about being real. He's the realist, right? And then he meets this character, Johnny Depp's character, who believes he's Don Juan. Like he's just like this romantic, right? Whatever. He's completely crazy. And the long and the short of the movie is you go through it. By the time you get to the end of the movie, everybody stops and goes, what's the point of being sane? It's no fun. It's way more fun to be insane.
Spoiler alert. Bob just did a spoiler alert.
I know, but it's a great movie because they all decide let's just live crazy. Like you only get to do this once.
Right. In the comments, you guys put a movie that's inspired you to of somebody that's joyful, is somebody that you aspire to be like. I mean that guy just reminded me. I'm like, to live life like that at all times. What is it that it takes to live life like that at all times?
Mm-hmm.
It takes a positive mindset. What else does it take? Having a firm foundation, like we always talk about, having that firm foundation to pull onto, no matter what you're going through, no matter what the struggle is, how are you overcoming? What are you doing? What are you pulling from? And of course, mine is my faith, is God. Is where I'm pulling from.
Well, sometimes, there's a whole lot of reasons, as to, why people have a hard time enjoying life. I mean, we can explore some of the underlying causes, but one of them is fear, right? Mm-hmm. Fear. One of my favorite books series is Dune. And there's a line in there about fear being the mind killer, which
what is it?
Dune.
Dune?
Yeah, Dune.
Oh, Dune, the thing with the sand.
Right, it's
worms.
About a Messiah, a young messianic figure that grows up on a desert planet.
Yes,
it's very very much like the story of Jesus, only in the future. But anyways, he has to overcome fear. But when you look back at life, you just realize how many things you wanted to do but didn't do because of fear. How many things you were in the middle of and you never actually stopped and enjoyed it because you were afraid, right? You're fearful of things turning bad or worst case scenario. I mean, fear can really rob you of the joy in a particular moment, right? So that I think fear is one thing that steals what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think another one is your values. In other words, if you are obsessed with the accumulation of status and stuff, wealth, right? Again, you're as we've talked, the guy that was, the guy that founded Cerner, he was so obsessed with status and stuff, and he just drove himself just like, like an insane man, only to get to the top and die of cancer. It's 60 something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, the old euphemism, stop and smell the roses. I mean, learning to, be in the moment, like just be here in the moment. And I actually had to learn that with my grandkids.
we go through that in the what ifs section, right, of our life. In the what if or shoulds, the shoulds. You shouldn't should on yourself. The shoulds and the what ifs. What if I would have done this? I think about that now. I have more of an entrepreneur spirit now than I ever did when I was younger. And I've done that. I've sat there and went, why didn't I do this sooner? Well, life was happening. That's why there were things happening. And I would have missed out on some other things if I would have been doing that, So timing, is perfect timing sometimes. So instead of going, what if, and I should have, and I can't, this is where you need to replace it with, I can, and there's still time, and go forward. I mean, you can't consistent, you still have time. You still can do it. I talked to a lady today, Mary Kay was 45 when she launched her cosmetic company, and she was very successful. So time is not the matter. It's really your mindset of when you're going to start it, and timing is, perfect timing. And God gives you some clues, he gives you clues when it's time to open that gate. And, as long as you have the right heart in it too, that's the other place, like you're saying, the guy, he did all those things to attain something, but was he serving others with it,
But again, even like with the Mary Kay and some of that situation, that those are people that are wanting to accomplish something, right? I mean, there is a whole train of thought that why do we need to accomplish and do, what I mean? Like, why don't we just enjoy the simplicity of life? In other words, the reason, if you think about it, why are we so driven to accumulate wealth? What you know what I mean? What drives us to push ourselves and create all this expectation?
Yeah.
Right.
What drives us to do that? I mean, it just depends on what your motivation is,
right? So for some people,
it is material
poverty,
things.
It's survival.
Right.
Right.
Right. I want to do that to help my children. I want to give to my children. Oh, you were stuck. You were stuck for a second.
Well, that's because somebody keeps sending me things on my computer, and it's like,
it's like you were stuck.
Somebody decided to,
Well, Michael said, what about Bob earlier?
Well, that's the movie.
Yeah, the movie. What about Bob? That's a good one. Yes. But I want to be successful. So I want to give my kids and my grandkids leave them something, do something for them, because I feel like that's what I would like to do with it. And I would like properties, and I would like certain things to not worry about retirement. I mean, that's my thing, is not worrying about retirement.
Well, I had a 3-hour lunch today with a guy that's a Joseph, which if you've read my book, you know what I'm talking about. But we were talking about that, those of us that are in our 60s headed towards 70, it's, what are we leaving, and of course, the default setting as Americans is it's always stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, it's about money and different things. And I was explaining to him, I said, what's interesting though, is when you go back and you listen to people's stories, I go, the things that I always hear that people leave is the impact that you have in person. That's what people remember. It's those words of life, those words of counsel. It was that hug. It was that you were there you were present in a difficult time. In other words, the things that people, that future generations remember is what you invested of yourself, not necessarily the handing down of your stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I guess my view is that, I just want my kids to have better than maybe I have had it, or
sure,
or so that they do have something, because generations of being over here in America, every family generation that we had before sold their land, kept selling their land, their land. I wish we had the land we had when we got over here into Virginia. I wish we, what I'm saying? So it's like, I kind of, that's where I'm coming from in that sense, because all of, we keep selling our stuff.
Well, it's like with my grandchildren, you've got one, I've got 8, and
wow.
My grandchildren, there's really nothing that I have that they really want except for one thing. And that's my love.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting in my times with them is I'm always asking God for words of life and things that I can deposit in their souls, and so I invest in them. And I recognize that as a male, I have tremendous influence in the self-esteem of my female granddaughters.
Right? Yes.
So my words matter. And this is going to sound crazy, but it's true, more than their parents.
No, it's not crazy.
There's something about being a grandparent. You have an authority.
Yes.
And the parents may say it, but if grandma or grandpa say it, it really means something. And I can just see it in their eyes when I speak in, but I look through their eyes into their soul, and it's like I put these little seeds in there. You know what I mean?
Well, because they think that more than their parents. So they're like, well, he knows more than my parents. So surely it's got to be good. So,
well, and you're also not the police. You know what I mean? So
you're not the authoritarian.
To wear the police uniform anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you didn't want to upset grandma. Like you didn't want to upset her because you didn't want to get that look. Like my grandma's had the look. Like that's where my mom and my, that's where they got it from, was that look. And you're like, I don't want to, everybody be quiet.
Yeah, one of my granddaughters has a hard time saying her L's, So Harper's her name, and I just can't get it out of my head. She was always like, Papa, look at me. Look at me, and because she likes to get on the trampoline and do these little things.
So
and
cute.
It's just, Papa, look at me, and the fact
I love that.
You know what I mean? That you're paying attention. So I'm just saying those things have value and are powerful and they have lasting value. These are things that your grandchildren will carry on all the way into adulthood. Like we don't realize what we're really investing in them. And so those are the inheritances, I guess.
Those are the legacy.
Yeah.
Those are the legacy pieces. I mean,
the next generation after them won't know me.
Right.
I'll be gone.
And that's the thing is when we all leave this and go to the next place, what was said about you, it was about your personality. It was about the things that you brought value to in their lives. Like you're saying, had nothing to do with money, had nothing to do with.
So I'm not against stuff. People giving, material inheritance to their children. So don't assume that I'm saying that. But what I'm saying is it doesn't compare, not even close in terms of your personal investment. In other words, you giving yourself and pouring that into that generation. As MC Hammer said, you can't touch this.
Well, that's along with the love languages.
Right.
My top one is quality time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is, affection. And the third is affirmation. Gifts are at the very bottom. Like I don't care about the materialistic stuff.
Right.
I would rather somebody spend their time and, like you're saying, impart wisdom or impart just their time.
Well,
and
it's
conversation.
Funny because when I come over, usually there's a show or something that they've watched that they want Papa to share with them, and so they have a family. This is one of my kids. They have this family room, and there's 4 of them. And when my daughter comes down, there's 2 on each side, like hanging on me, right?
That's great.
And one on my lap, and another one fighting to get in there. And it's like there's somewhere under this mass of grandchildren is a Papa,
Right.
And my daughter's always like, hey, kids, like, give Papa some space, but they don't want to give Papa. They want to be as close but as I said to her, I go, Jess, it's about connection.
Yeah.
Right. It's connection. They're connecting. Don't worry about it. I don't mind. They're connecting. They need to touch me. They need, right. And
after last year,
going back and forth, just sitting there together.
Yeah. After last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I was already told today that I had to quarantine when I get back. So.
Oh, from people here that were telling you, yeah. Oh yeah, but again, it's it's
what it is.
Well, it is what it is, and to be honest with you, some of that is just about being considerate, even though you may not have the same fears or the same concerns that they do. They do, right. And so it's an awkward season of life for all of us, where in some ways we're doing things out of love for others and their fears more than our own convictions.
Yeah. And like you're saying, I would rather, make them feel comfortable than, like you were saying. So.
Well, and we're just in a season right now where there's so many unknowns, and
there's still unknowns,
right?
Still. And I can't wait for that day that we can go, okay, now we know.
Well, one of the things that I know as a historian is that the newspaper reports, which are in the moment, compared to how historians 50 years from now will write about this same period of time, will be remarkably different. And the reason is because in the moment you have very little context. And things get blown out of proportion. There's so many emotions involved and everything. And so it's going to take a generation or two, and they'll look back and they will be objective about what's going on now, and will have a very different take on a lot of different things, because they have the advantage of hindsight.
That's right.
And so it'll be interesting. Of course, we'll all be gone by then, and it won't really matter to us. But for my grandkids and kids, it's going to be interesting for them. How are they being affected by all this? What's going on? Because these things impact you. My grandchildren basically missed a whole year of school, not academically, but relationally.
Yeah, I was watching a show on the swine flu today.
Oh yeah.
What happened when that happened, and the vaccinations, and it actually had Mary Tyler Moore on it. She was actually in this segment that I watched, because they were talking about the vaccines then, and there was a rumor that she had taken it, and she came out and said, I didn't take it. It was just this crazy kind of weird, similar, thing.
And we've had, it's not like pandemics are, like we've never had one. They've been pretty, I don't want to say consistent, but we've had them on a regular basis for thousands of years. So it's nothing new under the sun. I think what's made this particular thing so interesting, though, is we have this massive economic machine, that runs, like a finely tuned, automobile. And suddenly it's like we ended up with 4 flat tires. And it was just chaotic trying to keep this thing in the middle of the road. And then you had diametric perspectives of what was going on. And it's just, I would have to say, I would describe the last year as organized chaos.
Yeah.
Right. It's been these two very diametric.
Do you think it was organized?
Well, because of the fact that we all had to live, right? So we had to organize our lives and figure out in the middle of the chaos.
Do you think we're going to ever have that toilet paper shortage ever again? That was the craziest part. And everybody keeps going, it's not even a digestive issue. Why are we
Well, again,
it's a
I don't know
thing.
if you saw my Facebook page today, but I posted a cover of a book called Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. And this book was written in 1851 by a guy named Charles Mackay, who I consider maybe the first sociologist. But he was a historian, and he had gone back and noticed that there were these moments in human history where whole civilizations went down a road of just complete madness. Like in hindsight, you look at this and go, this was irrational. Like this should have never happened. But here, this whole country or this whole tribe or this whole group of people got caught up in believing something was true that wasn't.
Like
and
the Mayans.
And he talks about the madness of crowds,
You mean like the Mayans?
Well, one of the examples he talks about was in the Netherlands. I think it was in the 15 or 1600s. They got into investing in tulip bulbs. I mean, that's where actually the Van Gogh brothers lost their fortune. But people ended up, they were buying tulip bulbs for $100,000. Like it just it's just the whole thing, it was like a pyramid scheme, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And anybody with a rational brain would have looked at this and going, this is madness. But people were so caught up in making, it's just like the pyramid scheme thing, only it was a whole country that did this, right? And that's how the Van Goghs lost everything. They got caught up in it as well.
Egyptians did stuff like that throughout the ages, of just accumulating their things, and Yeah.
But we just you get into these, this is normal, and this is the problem with groupthink. There's a dilemma that we face, which is that as human beings we want to belong. Right? Because we were created to be in a group. Yes. We want to belong. But each one of these groups that we belong to is its own subculture with its own worldview and ideology and vocabulary and everything, right? Well, the only way that you get accepted in this group is to mimic and live in the worldview, right? If you in any way disagree with it, you get expelled because you're rebellious, right? So one of the places where you see this particularly terrible situation in the modern world was in Nazi Germany, right? Where whole groups of Germans, right, were caught up into this Aryan mentality that they were superior and all this kind of stuff, and horrible things were happening, but nobody could talk about it, right? So if you were a guy that spoke out against it, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, you died, right? So you had a whole and the reason I'm so keenly aware of this is that I have friends who were the children of the Nazis, right? These were their parents or their grandparents, right?
Right.
And it was just been fascinating talking with them and hearing these stories and how this culture dealt with this, because in hindsight, they look back and go, this is embarrassing. This is shameful. Like, it's not so much now, but the children of the Nazis lived with terrible shame. They were so embarrassed. Like, you just didn't talk about it because it was so, right? The grandchildren were the ones that finally went back and said, hey, we got to deal with this. Right. But again, you look back and it was sheer madness, but they all got caught up in this groupthink, right? The whole culture got caught up in this worldview that was just diabolical.
That's on a deeper level, but don't you still find, even at our ages, and that people do still want to feel like they belong and that they are accepted and that they're not rejected?
Absolutely.
And it's, it came really,
it's really evident strong in the church world.
It became really evident to me when I was in the dance world. I remember making that decision to move in a different position in the dance line. I know it doesn't make sense. Like when we're practicing, like where we stood, like there was a pecking order. There was an order of who ranked and who did, and it was subconscious. Like when nobody said, hey, you have to stand over here because you're not as good as that girl that's there. It just automatically, isn't that interesting the way that works, that socialization works. And I remember making a move from the end, like to the middle. Do you know what I mean? Like I remember making that choice. Like I need to move over here so that I can move up the ranks in this. Like I just innately knew that that's how that was going to happen. So it's interesting that even at our ages that we still act like children,
Well, it tells you just how strong the need is, right?
Yes.
Well, at lunch today, Jason, I was talking to this guy, and we were both of us coming up through the church world, and I was telling him that one of the comments I made in my book is that there hasn't been any innovation out of the religious world in 500 years. And he was looking at me going, God, because this is a guy who's very successful in business. And he goes, gosh, you're right. I go, yeah, everything that you see in the church world is basically that's something they've copied from outside of the church world and just put religious terminology. They've just repainted it and resold it, right? But I said, here's the problem, and here's why we don't have innovation. And it's this: because in order to be a innovator, you have to be rebellious, which is a really bad word in the religious world. But I said, basically, everybody that's historically been innovative has challenged the groupthink, right?
Yeah.
So guess what you get. This is going to be funny, but this is the truth. Most everybody who was innovative was weird. No, it's true.
True.
I really had to research this out. Almost all the people that are innovative live on the social fringe. Like they're introverts, they're odd people. They don't have a lot of friends. And so the reason why they can be innovative, right, is they have less to risk. No popular people are innovative.
I like that.
But it's true, because you're so busy being liked, right? And being a people pleaser. Right.
So I always want to go against the grain.
It's the odd person, the anti-social person, the guy that's a little weird, or a woman that's a little strange, who's the one that changes history because they have less to lose. So they'll take the risk.
Because they worry about what others. Yeah. They do worry about what others think.
So this is where, getting back to your point, it's really difficult, and this is going to be hard for people to hear, but most of us believe that we have made up our own minds about everything. But as a sociologist, I can tell you that you would be surprised if you saw the studies we've done and how much we are actually influenced by others.
Well, I love coffee.
But it's true. Almost every study that they've done with humans, you can always, in the end, manipulate them.
That's
and it's
a big topic right there.
Once you create this culture, right?
Yes.
This is normal. People do not. I mean, they're paranoid, right?
Yes.
To be left out. It's like this huge fear, right?
It is. It is a big fear.
Yeah.
And how do we combat that, though? I mean, how do you get so comfortable in yourself that you don't worry about others?
Well, I would say now here's where I think this starts to change. So I'll tell you a little story. When I was in my 30s, I lived down the street from one of the great religious leaders. His name was John Wimber, and he started a movement called the Vineyard, right? And so he was a bit of a mentor to me. And so I was sitting in his front room one day, and he looked me at the face and he said, "Hey, why are you and your friend Mike in such a hurry?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I go, "We're the Blues Brothers. We're on a mission for God." Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, we got to move here. I mean, time is of the essence, you know? And so, you know, I was explaining to him, I go, and I was puzzled by the question, you know what I mean? Because it was just like, what do you mean? Like, what are we supposed to take a vacation or something? And anyways, he's finally after I got done, he looks at me and he goes, "I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to understand for another 30 years. And I went, "Okay." He goes, "You're not even going to get comfortable in your own skin until you hit 60.
Whoa.
I went, "What?" Like, I was horrified by that. That's 3 decades away, right?
Wow.
And this is what he said to me. He goes, "When you hit 60, you know who you are, what you're about, where you want to go." And he goes, "You're so much less needy of other people's affirmation because you know you're secure." But he goes, "It's going to take you 6 decades to get there."
Oh,
and
my.
You know what?
Well,
he's absolutely right, because I'm 64 now. And you know what? I don't care. I am in a place in my life where somebody can sit across the table from me and totally disagree with me. And it's like, okay, great. When I was younger, that just made me so insecure.
And I wish I could say that I was there, but I'm not. I still have that little bit of me that wants to be included. You know, I still want to be looked at as, oh, she has something important to say. And that's a hard thing to deal with, because I recognize that, right? So what do you do when you know it? You're like, okay, I know that.
Honestly, that's the biggest step, right? So then what happens? So this is the way I do it. You know, first you recognize it, right?
Yeah.
Second thing is you recognize when you're doing it, right? That's the second. So I call that a red flag. So you're aware that you've got this thing. And then next thing is suddenly your spirit, there's a little red flag that goes off in your spirit going, "I'm doing it." Meaning that, you know what I mean? This thing, right? Well, here's the issue. There's a moment, there's a space, there's a period of time where you have to make a choice as to how you're going to deal with that. If you are like me sometimes and in a hurry, you blow through those red flags, right? And you end up getting into a bit of a wreck because your ego is needing so badly to be stroked that you end up creating a mess, right? As you get older, you start recognizing and you go, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm doing that again. I can feel it because I'm looking for something." Right. I'm pulling something in because I'm needing something. And I go, "Stop it." You know, I'll have this conversation with, "Stop it. Well, you don't need to do this."
You were talking about John Wimber. And of course I know about John Wimber because I was part of the Vineyard as well. But my thing is that I always thought that we did have to be hurried to help people to, you know, find Jesus. And so here's the revelation I finally came to. You know? Jesus will find them.
Yeah.
I always thought I had to point and have and them to know Jesus. Jesus will find them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's true. He will.
I actually don't know too many people that don't know about Jesus. I mean, in our modern world with all the technology, it's not really an issue about knowing of him. The bigger issue is actually having a correct impression of who he is. And that's where I find most people have a very distorted view of not only who God is, but even who Jesus was. And of course, that's because of, you know, institutional religion, which has sort of distorted some of that. So,
because
what I find myself doing more now is just kind of unpacking Jesus for them, going, you know, I think you'd be surprised.
They would be very surprised that Jesus would be more accepting of people, of everyone.
Well, what's fun for me is because I understand the Gospels and I'm a historian, I understand the context, right? And most people, they don't really understand the context. So they read the Bible, they get lost. But when you go back and tell the story of the Good Samaritan or the Samaritan woman, and you explain to people Jesus' cross-culturalness, his his ability to cross race, his ability to cross gender, his ability to even cross institutional religious. I mean, he just had this amazing capacity, right? That was so powerful that he actually became a threat to all of the institutions, right? Which is most people, you find out, they have had a bad church experience, right? They've had a bad organized religious experience, which has then gone on to distort their view of God. And one of the things that I'll do with people often is I'll say, well, wait a minute, shouldn't God have a chance to introduce himself to you by himself? In other words, your filter is these bad experiences you've had with other broken human beings, who are basically a really bad reflection of him.
Right. And that term church hurt came, oh, that person's church hurt. Well, that means that they were focused on the people, and because they didn't understand, that relationship with God, maybe, or they didn't have that personal, hearing.
Well, when you remind people, there was something that Jesus was accused of by religious people, which is fascinating. And I go, well, what's that? And I go, well, the thing that bothered the church people was that he was a friend of sinners. And they're like, really? I go, now think this through. It didn't say he was an acquaintance or he knew sinners. It said he was a friend. Right. That's intimacy. Right. That's closeness. That's proximity. Right. I said Jesus was a friend to sinners. Right. That's why everybody was so freaked out when he told Zacchaeus to get out of the tree and he was coming to his house. Like, not him. He's a sinner. I mean,
do you know that song? I'm coming to your house too.
But again, even in his disciples, he had Matthew, right? The tax collector. I mean, this is a guy who was a sellout to the oppressive Romans, and he's one of Jesus' students. You know what I mean? So here Jesus is. He's got sellouts, right?
Peter.
He's got, what?
Peter.
Right. Well, Peter's problem is he spoke most of the time before he thought.
Right. And then he acted like he didn't know Jesus, which was really not that great. Like, oh, I don't know him. Okay, I'm gonna be over here.
I mean, again, I don't want to be overly controversial here, but the truth of it is, if they actually knew who he was and what he was doing, they all would have been standing at the foot of the cross, and there was only the women and John were there, which tells you they really didn't get it, right? And it wasn't until after the resurrection, when he came back, when the penny dropped. It was like, OMG, as we say, right? It's like, now we get it. That's the only reason why Peter is able to stand up on Pentecost and preach, right? Because had there been no resurrection, he would have had no clue what Jesus' life really was about, right? So again, this is, I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but remember, the Gospels are in hindsight.
Yes.
Right? Yes. The Gospels were not written as a newspaper report. It was in hindsight. So there's context in there, right?
Right.
People
but when they would have written it.
This is what he meant.
Right.
Because at the time they didn't actually get it. They were following him because he was healing and feeding them. And he had words of life, right? He was like, nobody really understood what was going on. It was only in hindsight later that it all started coming together.
He was always speaking in the future tense. But going backwards, which was very confusing. Like he was speaking of the prophecies in the past, but speaking of the future, and they were trying to figure that out because he was in the present, right? So it was always that whole what like what Why is he speaking like this?
I mean, can you imagine Jesus is healing the servant of a Roman centurion? I mean, you just can't get any more. What the heck is going on here? Right.
Right. So you can imagine the
Roman military was the oppressive force that was crucifying Jews.
Yeah.
And here he is at one of these guys, right? And even to make matters worse, he turns around to the Jewish people and goes, well, this guy's got more faith than you guys do. I mean, can you imagine what a worldview collision that was?
Yeah, because Pilate's standing there going, I don't really want to crucify him. Like he hasn't done anything to me, like why do you guys want to crucify him?
It's kind of like, I mean, I'm exaggerating here a little bit, but it's like if Jesus came back now, right? Mm-hmm. We'd all expect him to come to all of our big churches, right? and Jesus shows up at Joe's Bar and Grill. And he's having a beer and a burger.
That's right.
Right? With everybody. Right? No, but I mean, this is how the religious leaders looked at him. It's like, wait a minute. You can't be the Messiah. Like, you can't be this, right? It's all wrong here. You're having a burger with the guys down at the bar.
Yeah. There's no way that you're who you say you are.
Right. You can't be, because we already know that. I mean, we already have it figured out. I mean, we've been telling people for 700 years, this is what you're going to do.
But that head Pharisee, he had to have really known, but he didn't want to lose his affluence. So it was a pride issue. And,
because Jesus had influence, right?
Right. And he knew, when you hear truth, you know it. I mean, right? I mean, when you hear truth, you're like, oh, that's true. That's true. And, that's where the phrase amen comes from. Cause I do that a lot to people. I amen them a lot. When I hear truth, I go, amen. Yeah. Yeah. That's an agreement. And, you can imagine, I mean, all throughout, he said everything justly. He never said anything accusatory except for when he had to.
Well, he was pretty hard. What's interesting, he was really hard on the Jewish religious leaders compared to the Roman leaders, which he never really ever addressed directly.
No.
Like, he was more, and the reason for it, again, is you have to understand that his teachings were all about motive, right? And he saw the Romans as being authentic, meaning they were evil.
They were who they were,
right? But the religious leaders were hypocrites, right?
Right.
And that really bothered Jesus because they were pretending to be something they were not.
Well,
you can see how here the reason Jesus, I mean, this sounds funny, but in my view, the reason Jesus is a friend of sinners is because they're authentic.
They're authentic.
Right? Sinners are sinners. They don't hide their sin,
You're just authentic sinning. Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying,
true.
These were people that were genuine. They knew who they were. They were either a prostitute or a tax gatherer or some whatever.
But that's the problem in the church today. Is that people are watching them so closely that when they're fallible and they're actually people and they've sinned, that's when it crushes people's spirits.
But again, how did we get to a place where we have this expectation that these people are supposed to not be people? Like somehow they were made in a lab. And
I know where it comes from. It does come from scripture.
Who are so perfect.
There are some scriptures about if you're an elder and if you're this and if you're that you're supposed to be just and you're supposed to have children that are, there are places in the Bible that they hold on to those scriptures.
And again, those are nice, idealized what we want to be, but you're having to realize here that Peter himself spent his whole life struggling with racism. Him and Paul battled it out continually about eating with Gentiles and eating certain food. You know what I mean? In other words, there was this constant struggle, and Paul was accusing Peter of being a hypocrite. So you see this even in the early church. You got Pentecost, and a few weeks later, there's a big fight breaks out between the Gentile widows and the Jewish widows, and who's being taken care of. You know what I mean? So, the problem we have is that the religious world has so sanitized the story, right? That they've created this unrealistic view of even what the early church was like, that somehow, it was this glorious time of signs and wonders and the grace of God. And yet these people are struggling with their humanity, right?
Right.
Think about it. Peter is filled with the Holy Spirit and preaching, and thousands get saved, and he still hates Romans. It takes God 3 times in Joppa to slap him upside the head with this vision, like 3 times, not once, not twice,
which is an interesting concept if you think of that in context, because of the Roman church is supposedly from Peter,
right?
Of all things,
God has a sense of humor.
That is kind of funny. It's like, wait a minute, aren't the Romans the ones he was against, but now he's the one? Okay. That's where he built the church.
One of my lines that I constantly remind people of is that from the beginning of time, it's always been the grace of God working through broken clay vessels. It's never changed. That storyline is the same thread that's been woven through the whole tapestry of history. And so all of these idealized images that you have of these biblical figures, if my next book ever comes out, I want to blow all the holes through that worldview, because every one of these people is broken and dysfunctional. Every one of these people is struggling just like you and I are. What's cool about it is you begin to realize, it's not an excuse for us to go out and all be crazy sinners, but what it does is gives us room to understand, as I think I posted, the reason why God uses failures is there isn't any other kind. Right. In other words, we're all failures. We've all are broken. We all are. So that's just normal. So get over it. When people disappoint you, when leaders don't live up to your expectations, we'll get over it, because you actually you're living in a fantasy world. You're living in a world that's not real.
Right. And when you're in that role and you think that you're living up to that ideal, and things start to fracture, like you're talking about with the clay pots, when it starts to fracture, the guilt and the unforgiveness that comes in with that on yourself. I'm not talking about from others. I'm just talking about on yourself.
To me is, having worked with athletes and people that have star power, and then being in the religious world, I noticed a similarity, and it's the fact that their prestige is a prison.
Right, because they have to live into whatever mold it
other
was.
People's expectations, right? So all of the guys that play for the Chiefs or the Royals or the people that I worked with, because people saw them on a big stage, right? They didn't quite grasp the fact that these guys have marriage problems. They got to get on with their wife just like everybody else does. They've got kids that are struggling. They've got family issues, siblings that are jealous. They have all the very same issues, but nobody wants to see them in that light. So whenever they're out in public, they're always in this prison of other people's expectations. Well, it's the exact same thing in the church world, and I've seen it over and over again. So one of the great ironies of people that I know in the religious world who have had major falls, you know what their common phrase is to me every time?
What's that?
I'm free.
I'm
finally free.
Because they didn't have to live up to that expectation anymore.
It's the weirdest thing, because you'd think that they're all completely undone because of the fact that they failed people. but in reality, what they're actually relieved, going, I don't have to live
Finally,
up to people's
I don't have to do that
anymore.
Right.
I'm free now. I get to go live my life.
Wow.
It's not what people think.
Right. Be your authentic self.
Yeah.
And that's hard, you know.
Well, it's very hard
because you want to people please, you want to fit in,
right?
Right. Back to those things. You want to fit in, people please, you want to do all those things. So how do you live your authentic self?
Well, according to John Wimber, it takes 6 decades.
Apparently.
No, it's a journey. I mean, there's no shortcuts to this.
Exactly. There are no shortcuts.
And it's trial and error, whatever, and it's learning about yourself and what makes you tick and what your weaknesses are. And I mean, it's a constant struggle. Now, you know, not that I've arrived, you know, because it's not that I don't struggle with these things, but I'm so aware now of the dynamics in place that I catch myself going, hey, whoa. You know?
Well, yeah, because, and I'm thinking, for some reason, I'm thinking of a resume. So always internally putting together a resume of yourself. Like, you know, I'm this, that, you know, you categorize, you know, these are the jobs I had, these are the roles I've had, these are the skills I have. So, you know, I think that's what we do to ourselves. That's how we throw those expectations, is because we want our resume to look good.
Yeah.
You know,
but that brings us full circle back to where we started this evening with, you know, about living your life. You know what I mean? And what you begin to realize, it takes you a long time to figure this out, but your greatest joy is being you.
Yep.
Your authentic self, right?
Yeah,
and
I'm going through this challenge right now.
So long to figure out who that authentic self is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. And it's hard to do that when you have been a mask wearer. That's a hard thing. Let me tell you, I'm the queen of that.
But it's freedom. There's a freedom in it, and there's happiness and joy, and you can live in because you're just not living in this constant fear of others' expectations, others' opinions, you know, others, it's just, you're just not a prisoner anymore. And so, like I said, the people that have got to the top and failed, they're like, I'm out of jail. I got my get out of jail free card. And it's because they failed. And you're like, wait a minute, that's supposed to be a bad thing, but not in their mind. This is like, I just got my get out of jail free card. I get to go live my life now and be free. And
your life, and that brings us full circle to my dude that's going like this. Hey, living his life in the rain.
Right.
He's living his life. He doesn't care. He could get hit by a car in his next second because he's at the traffic thing, but he didn't care. He's like, I'm living my best life.
Right.
You know? Yeah. That's what we have to do. Be authentic. So thank you. That was great. So there goes that. So, all right. We're not having any coffee chats or anything next week.
All right. So
somebody's on vacation.
I get to sleep in on Monday.
You get to sleep in. You get to
nothing on Thursday because someone is going to be in Florida.
Yeah, Florida.
And doesn't have time for the rest of us because she'll be beaching it.
I will. I'll be touring apartments. It's not that exciting. Okay. It's not as elegant as it sounds. So, so here's the authentic self. I get to go talk to leasing agents and look at dingy apartments. Okay. So let's not make it
so this is a business trip, we'll say.
Sort of.
Okay.
Sort of.
Sort of.
I will be at the beach. Anyway, you all have a wonderful week. Hey, Michael, I might see you down there, by the way.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
Bob.
Have
fun, and we'll see you in a week.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
10 days, whatever. So
if I come back.
If you come back.
If I come back.
And
so anyway.
And if you're not Jonah and a whale doesn't eat you while you're in the beach.
That's right. That's right. All right, you guys. All take
care.
Right,
God bless.
Thank you for joining us. All right. See you next week. Bye.
All right.